Noah woke up to a sharp scream echoing through the house. The kind of scream that feels like it's inside your bones. He shot up from bed, heart racing. Something was wrong. Something deep inside the house. The moonlight filtered weakly through the curtains, casting long shadows that seemed to move. Noah didn't believe in ghosts. Not in the traditional sense, but the fear creeping into his chest was something new. Something primal. He pulled the blanket off and walked cautiously toward the source of the sound. His footsteps echoed through the empty hall, too loud in the silence. A cold wind brushed past him, even though all the windows were closed. His hand hesitated on the door handle, sweat dripping down his brow. What could be waiting for him on the other side? Noah moved deeper into the house, each step heavier than the last. The air felt different, thick with something that wasn't quite right. The walls, once familiar, now seemed distant and unwelcoming. His heart pounded in his chest. The house was older than he remembered, the smell of dust and decay lingering in every corner. He could almost hear whispers in the dark, but when he turned to look, nothing was there. His mind raced, trying to explain what was happening, but every rational thought was drowned out by the feeling that someone was watching him. He stopped, eyes darting around, but all he saw was darkness and silence. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself, but deep down he knew something had changed. The house had changed. Noah continued down the hallway, each footstep sounding louder than the last. The house seemed to stretch endlessly before him, its old walls closing in. He could almost feel something brushing against his skin, like an invisible presence just out of reach. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but he couldn't. The further he walked, the more oppressive the air became. The shadows seemed to have a life of their own, flickering and shifting, as if watching his every move. He caught a glimpse of something at the end of the hallway, a flicker of movement that vanished before his eyes. The chill in the air deepened, and Noah felt his heart racing. He was no longer sure it was his mind playing tricks on him or if something was truly there. But as he moved forward, there was no turning back. Noah's breath caught in his throat as the distant whisper seemed to call his name. The sound echoed through the house, clear and unmistakable. It wasn't a voice he recognized, but it sounded as though it was coming from within the walls themselves. He froze in place, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. The hallway stretched ahead, dark and endless, but the whispers grew louder. His heart hammered in his chest as his feet refused to move. He was trapped in this nightmare, and there was no escape. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the whispering grew more urgent, like a warning. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was right behind him. Noah's thoughts were a blur as he moved deeper into the house. The whispers continued, now replaced by soft, slow footsteps behind him. He could feel the presence drawing closer, his breath quickening with every step he took. He turned around, his eyes scanning the hallway, but there was no one there. The silence was deafening, but he could still feel the weight of something following him. Desperation started to set in as he realized he wasn't alone in this house. The air grew colder, and his breath fogged in the dim light. Every corner seemed to hide something, but nothing ever appeared. It was like being watched by something that never showed itself, and that was the most terrifying part. Noah wandered further through the house, each corner darker than the last. The air was thick, colder now, and with each step, he felt the weight of an unseen presence pressing down on him. His skin tingled as if something, or someone, was brushing past him. His thoughts raced, trying to make sense of it all. Was he losing his mind, or was there truly something there? He had to know. He pushed open another door, leading into what seemed like a study. But the room felt wrong. The walls were covered in old, faded books, but the overwhelming sense of dread was undeniable. The light flickered as if protesting the very presence in the room. Noah couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Every moment, every breath felt like a trap, and the air seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. Whatever was here, it was patient, waiting. Noah's breath was shallow as he scanned the room. He had seen old houses before, but this one felt different. The weight of its history was palpable, and the silence was suffocating. He heard a creak, faint but distinct, coming from behind the bookshelf. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Was it just the house settling, or something else? His hands gripped the edge of the wooden desk, knuckles white. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Turning around quickly, he tried to convince himself that nothing was there. But the air was thick, colder than it should be. It felt wrong. The room seemed to close in on him, every shadow growing deeper, every noise louder. He knew now that there was no way out of this place, not unless he understood what was happening. The silence was broken again, this time by a soft whisper. Noah froze, every muscle in his body tensing. He turned quickly, searching the room, but saw nothing. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere, inside his head, in the walls, behind the bookshelves. The voice was soft, almost too soft to hear, but it felt as if it was calling him. He couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, something malevolent. His mind raced. Was this the entity? The curse that had been haunting him? He had to get out of here, but his legs wouldn't move. It was as if the room itself was holding him captive. The whispers grew louder, echoing in his mind, and the temperature in the room dropped further. He was being consumed by the darkness. Suddenly, the door to the study slammed shut behind him, the sound deafening in the quiet of the room. Noah jumped, heart hammering in his chest. His first instinct was to run, but the way the door had slammed felt final. It was as if the house itself had sealed him in. The whispering continued, now louder and clearer, as if something or someone was calling him. His body trembled as he slowly approached the door, feeling the weight of the house pressing down on him. He tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He wasn't going anywhere. Panic set in, and he slammed his fist against the door. It felt like hours, though it could have been mere minutes. Every breath was harder to take. The temperature continued to drop, the walls seeming to pulse with an energy he couldn't understand. With no way out, Noah turned back toward the room. The whispering was louder now, and it felt like the walls themselves were closing in. He couldn't breathe. The air was thick, oppressive, suffocating. His body trembled, but there was nothing to do but face whatever was waiting. As he moved deeper into the room, he noticed something in the corner of his eye, a faint glow, barely noticeable but undeniable. It came from an old mirror on the far wall. Noah hesitated for a moment before walking towards it, his mind racing. The closer he got, the more the whispers intensified. His hand reached out toward the mirror, but the moment his fingers touched the glass, the room seemed to twist. The temperature plummeted, and his reflection wasn't his own. Noah couldn't believe what he was reading. The journal was filled with ancient symbols and cryptic notes, each entry a chilling reminder of his bloodline's connection to the cursed house. It seemed his ancestors had made a dark pact long ago, one that had tied them to this evil. The words were vague, but the meaning was clear. The curse wasn't just something that haunted the house. It had been passed down through generations. The realization hit him like a wave. This wasn't just a random event. He was part of the horror. The very blood running through his veins was linked to the malevolent force stalking him. Noah's fingers shook as he turned the pages, each one more damning than the last. He had been brought here for a reason, and it was far worse than he could have imagined. Noah slammed the journal shut, the sound echoing through the empty room. His mind was spinning. The truth was worse than he could have ever imagined. The curse had been laid upon his family long before he was born, and it had never been broken. His ancestors had worshipped a dark entity, binding themselves to it with blood and sacrifice. Now, that entity was coming for him. Noah ran his hands through his hair in frustration. How had he never known this? How could his family have kept such a terrible secret? The walls around him seemed to close in, the air thick with the weight of the knowledge he had just uncovered. There was no escaping the past. Whatever horror had been unleashed upon his family had now come to claim him. The door to the study creaked open, and Noah spun around, heart racing. Standing in the doorway was the keeper of knowledge, the figure who had appeared earlier, guiding him through his terrifying journey. But now their face was different. There was a coldness in their eyes that Noah hadn't noticed before. The keeper's voice was calm, almost too calm as they spoke. "You've discovered the truth," they said, as if they had known all along. Noah felt a surge of anger. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. The keeper stepped inside, their expression unreadable. "Because you needed to see it for yourself," they replied. "The curse can't be broken by just words. You must face it." Noah's breath quickened. "How do I stop it?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. But the keeper of knowledge only shook their head, a grim smile crossing their lips. "You can't." Noah's mind raced as the keeper of knowledge spoke. There was no way out. The curse had been passed down through his family for generations, and no one had ever escaped it. He was tied to this place, to the evil that haunted his bloodline. Desperation clawed at him. "But there has to be a way," he insisted, his voice shaking. The keeper of knowledge shook their head, their tone regretful. "The only way to end it is through sacrifice. A life must be given to break the bond." Noah's stomach twisted. "Whose life?" he whispered, the weight of the question heavy in the air. The keeper didn't answer immediately. Finally they spoke, "Your own." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and for a moment Noah couldn't breathe. He was trapped by his past, by his bloodline, and by his own fate. Noah stumbled back, the weight of the keeper of knowledge's words crushing him. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't sacrifice himself to end this nightmare. But as the keeper's words lingered in his mind, something else began to shift. The house seemed to groan, the walls creaking as if alive. The whispers returned, louder now, demanding his attention. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and twist. He was being consumed, slowly suffocated by the very house he had once called home. Noah's knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor. The fear had taken hold, and there was nothing left to do but wait for the curse to claim him. The past had finally caught up with him. Noah's breath was shallow as he stood in the center of the room, his mind struggling to make sense of everything that had happened. The curse, the whispers, the keeper of knowledge's warning, it was all too much. His body was exhausted, his heart weighed down by the reality of his situation. He couldn't escape it, not anymore. The walls felt like they were closing in on him, the shadows longer, the air colder. Noah's pulse raced as the sound of creaking wood filled the room. He wasn't alone anymore. Something stirred in the darkness, something that had been waiting for him. The presence was stronger than before, a force that filled every corner of the room. He could feel it, its cold tendrils creeping closer. The house was alive, and it was coming for him. There was no running, no hiding, only facing what lay ahead. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Noah's ears rang with the low hum of whispers, creeping into his mind, speaking words he couldn't understand. He stepped back, heart racing. The temperature dropped suddenly, a biting chill that made his breath fog in the air. Shadows began to twist around the room, moving of their own accord, and in the corner of his eye, he saw the faintest outline of a figure. His heart skipped a beat. Was it the thing haunting him, or was it something worse, something tied to his bloodline? Noah couldn't tell anymore. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of escape, but there was none. The door he came through had vanished, leaving only the creeping shadows that seemed to reach for him. Noah took a step forward, his heart racing faster with each passing second. The shadows twisted violently, forming into a shape, a figure standing in the far corner of the room. He could barely make out the outline of a face, but it was enough. The face wasn't human, its features distorted and twisted, as if the darkness itself had given it form. Noah's legs shook, but he forced himself to take another step, his voice trembling. "Who are you?" he demanded, but the figure did not respond. Instead, it reached out toward him, its hands long and skeletal. The air around him seemed to vibrate, filled with an unnatural pressure. He backed away, terror surging through him, but the figure advanced. There was no way out. Noah's mind raced, desperate for any solution, any way to escape this nightmare. But the figure was drawing closer, its hands outstretched, and Noah's body refused to move. His fear had paralyzed him. The figure's voice, a low and raspy whisper, filled the room. "You cannot escape," it said, its voice echoing as if it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You are mine!" The words sent a jolt of terror through Noah's body. His pulse thudded in his ears, and he could feel the room closing in, the air thick and suffocating. The figure was right. There was no escaping this, no way to fight back. The realization hit him like a wave. He was trapped, and the curse would claim him. The figure moved closer, its cold, ghostly hands brushing against Noah's skin. The touch was icy, sending a shock of terror through his body. He gasped for air, but his chest felt tight, as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. His heart raced, and his legs buckled beneath him, sending him crashing to the floor. The figure loomed over him, its face now fully visible, a grotesque blend of human and shadow, its eyes glowing with malice. Noah could feel its power, its cold, unrelenting hold over him. His mind screamed for escape, but his body was too weak to move. As the figure reached down to claim him, Noah realized there was no hope left. The curse had already taken him. Noah's heart raced as the figure's hands reached closer to him. The air was thick with dread, and the room seemed to stretch endlessly, pulling him into its darkness. He had no strength left. He had tried everything, every escape, every way to fight back. But nothing worked. The figure's face twisted in a grotesque smile as it loomed over him. Noah could feel its power draining him, his body weakening with each passing second. But just as he thought all hope was lost, something shifted inside him. The memory of his ancestors, the bloodline that had cursed him, flashed in his mind. He wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The curse could be broken, but only if he was willing to sacrifice everything. He could feel the energy growing inside him, a surge of power that pushed against the malevolent force. The surge of power inside Noah grew stronger, his body trembling as he stood up against the figure. He couldn't explain it, but he knew what he had to do. The house, the curse, the bloodline, they had all led him to this moment. With every ounce of strength he had left, Noah pushed against the figure, feeling the air around him crackle with energy. The figure recoiled, its form flickering like a shadow under the pressure. It hissed, a sound filled with anger and fear. "You can't destroy me," it growled. But Noah wasn't listening. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, but he focused on the energy surging inside him. "I can end this," he whispered to himself. With one final push, Noah reached out, unleashing the power he had been holding back. The figure screamed as it was pushed back into the shadow. The figure's form faltered, but it wasn't gone. It twisted and writhed, dark tendrils stretching out in every direction, clawing at the walls. Noah's breath came in ragged gasps, his energy waning. He had pushed it back, but it wasn't enough. He needed more. Suddenly he remembered something the Keeper of Knowledge had said: the curse can only be broken by sacrifice. The realization hit him like a hammer. To break the curse, to destroy the entity, he would have to give up everything: his life, his future. There was no other way. As the figure lunged toward him again, Noah closed his eyes and prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. He had come this far. He wouldn't let the curse destroy everything. As the figure closed in, Noah took a deep breath and stepped forward, letting the power he had gathered surge through him. "This ends now," he whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The figure howled as it was hit by the force of Noah's power, its form flickering wildly. The air grew heavy, the room vibrating with the intensity of the battle. Noah could feel the curse breaking, the bond between his bloodline and the entity shattering. The room seemed to shake, and the walls cracked, the house itself protesting the end of the curse. The figure screeched in fury, but Noah's power was too much. With one final overwhelming surge, the entity was consumed by the light. The shadows disappeared, leaving only a broken silence. The room fell silent. The power that had consumed it slowly faded, and Noah's body collapsed to the floor. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. The weight of what he had done settled on him, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt quiet. The shadows were gone, the whispers silenced. Noah lay on the cold floor, exhausted but free. He had broken the curse. The house no longer held him captive. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that for the first time, he could move forward. The silence was not peaceful. It was unsettling, as if the house was waiting for him to leave. But for now, Noah was at peace. He had won, but the price had been high. He could only wonder what the cost of his victory would truly be. Noah woke up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was silent now, the oppressive presence that had once filled it gone. Yet the relief he felt was fleeting, replaced quickly by a lingering emptiness. The battle was over, but the victory tasted hollow. He had defeated the entity, broken the curse that had haunted his family for generations, but at what cost? His body ached, and his mind was weary. The house, once alive with the malevolent force, now felt abandoned, like a tomb. The air was still, but it wasn't peaceful. It was unnerving. Noah stood up, taking one last look at the shattered room. The walls that had once been alive with fear now stood silent, as if mourning the end of an era. He wasn't sure what to do next. There was no going back to what he had before. The past had claimed its price. As Noah walked through the house, the once familiar space felt foreign, empty. The haunting whispers were gone, but so was the warmth of the place he once called home. The walls, once adorned with family photos, were now barren. The photographs gone, as if they had never existed. Each step he took echoed in the silence, amplifying the feeling of isolation. There was no one left. No family, no comfort. The house had claimed them, and now it had claimed him. As he reached the front door, the weight of the past pressed down on him. He hesitated, the door handle cold in his hand. He wasn't sure what lay beyond that threshold, but he knew it wouldn't be a life he recognized. The curse had stolen everything, and now it had taken his future. The door opened with a creak, the sound echoing into the empty night. Noah stepped outside, his breath visible in the cold air. The house loomed behind him, dark and silent, as if it had swallowed everything it once held dear. The street was empty, the world outside as quiet as the house. There was no welcoming warmth, no comfort in the air, just the harsh, cold reality of what had happened. Noah took a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts, but the weight of everything, his family's past, the curse, the sacrifices, crushed him. He couldn't go back, But he couldn't move forward either. The road ahead was unknown, and it was terrifying. His chest tightened as he realized he was alone now, with nothing but the lingering echoes of the horrors he had faced. The silence stretched on as Noah stood in the cold. He didn't know how long he stood there, but it felt like hours. The weight of his actions, the sacrifices, all of it had become a burden he could not escape. His mind raced with thoughts of his family, of what he had lost. He had broken the curse, but at the cost of his own future. He could never go back to the life he had once known. The thought of moving on felt impossible, as if the very air around him was thick with the ghosts of the past. And yet, there was a flicker of something else inside him, a glimmer of hope, however small, that perhaps, just perhaps, he could find a way forward. He had survived after all, and survival meant something, even if the world had changed. As the cold air bit into his skin, Noah took one last look at the house. The memories of his family, the horrors, and the curse, all of it had come to an end. But the weight of the past lingered, an invisible presence that would never leave him. The world ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: he could no longer stay here. He turned away, the door to the house closing behind him. The world felt different now, but in a way that made him feel smaller, more alone. He didn't know where he was going, but he had to keep moving. Survival was all he had left, and he wasn't ready to give that up. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Noah felt the faintest stir of hope. Noah stood at the edge of the woods, the place where it all began. The house was behind him now, a dark silhouette against the fading light of dusk. It felt like he had left it behind, but in his chest, the weight of the past still pressed down. The curse was over, the house was empty, but Noah knew that no matter how far he went, the memories would always remain. The horrors he had faced, the sacrifices, and the price of his survival, they were all part of him now. His hands trembled as he adjusted his backpack, preparing to leave the town behind. But no matter how far he ran, he couldn't outrun the shadows of his past. The house would forever haunt his thoughts, a dark stain on his soul. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the echoes of everything he had lost. But Noah had no choice but to move forward. There was nothing left for him here. Noah walked down the dirt path, the town barely visible in the distance. He felt the urge to look back, but he refused to. Every step forward felt like a small victory, but the unease gnawing at him would not let go. The house was behind him, but something else lingered, an unsettling feeling that followed him like a shadow. He could still hear the whispers sometimes, faint, but there, carried by the wind. He couldn't escape the past, not completely. The silence that had settled around him now felt like a lie. Noah knew that the evil he had fought was not entirely gone. It was still out there, waiting, and maybe it was inside him now. He would never truly be free. The road ahead was long, and Noah didn't know where it would lead, but he couldn't turn back. There was no going back to what he had before. He had survived, but at what cost? As he walked further, the town grew distant, and the land around him seemed to grow wilder, untouched by human hands. Noah could feel the weight of his decision, the journey he had started. It was an unknown road, and there were no promises that it would lead to peace. In the stillness of the open land, Noah thought he could hear something faint, whispers on the wind, a familiar voice. He shook his head, trying to push the thought away, but it clung to him. It was as if the house, the curse, the memories, they were all still with him, echoing in the back of his mind. His footsteps slowed as he realized he would never be rid of the darkness. It wasn't just the house, it was part of him now. He could only hope that the future would be enough to drown out the echoes of the past. Noah reached the edge of the forest, his feet aching from the long walk. The town was behind him now, and there was no turning back. The whispers had faded, But a new kind of silence had settled in, one that felt just as heavy. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the house still standing behind him, looming in the distance. But it wasn't there. The land was empty, but somehow the absence of the house felt worse than if it had remained. The house was gone, but its memories were alive inside him, in the deepest parts of his soul. He was free of the curse. But the question lingered, was he truly free? He didn't have the answer. And perhaps he never would. As the day drew to a close, Noah found a spot beneath a tree to rest. The night was closing in, and the world around him was silent, save for the soft rustling of leaves. He closed his eyes, the exhaustion weighing heavily on him. But as the darkness deepened, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. A cold chill swept over him, and he opened his eyes, staring into the growing darkness. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move, but when he blinked, it was gone. He stood up, heart pounding, his breath coming in short gasps. The silence was broken by a soft whisper, distant but unmistakable. Noah froze, his eyes scanning the darkness. The curse was gone, but its echoes would never leave him. And as the wind howled through the trees, he realized the horror was not over. It was only waiting for him to slip up, waiting for him to forget.